All right, welcome back. It's Professor Medley with Psychology 2301. We are now up to Chapter 11 on personality. In this chapter, you will get introduction to a definition of what personality is overall, Sigmund Freud and the psychodynamic perspective, neo-Freudians like Adler, Erikson, Jung, Horney, I always call her Horney, various learning approaches related to personality, humanistic approaches, biological approaches, the trait theorists who have personality theories, and then cultural understandings of personality. Lastly, will be personality assessments, so things like projective assessments and objective assessments that are meant to give you insight into personality. So a lot is jam-packed into chapter 11. Typically, though, the personality chapter is one of my favorites because it gives you insight into yourself a lot of times, maybe some insight that you don't necessarily um, want, but possibly some that you do. So there may be some comparisons between what's considered normal and abnormal personality factors that comes up in this chapter as well for you. In chapter 11, you'll find that psychologists have attempted to provide comprehensive and accurate descriptions of personality for decades. I was going to say hundreds of years. Psychology has been around, not quite hundreds, as a profession, so for decades. Um, Before there was even really that profession of psychology, people tried to explain and describe the characteristics of other people in whatever ways they knew how. So think about it. How would you describe your personality? I think I've mentioned maybe on one of the videos that I'm introverted, right? So that would be an aspect of my personality. I consider myself thrifty yet generous. Um, what else? Sometimes humorous. I don't know. Now think about not just how you would describe yourself, but how other people would describe you, right? Would other people use those same um, descriptors, right, to describe you? So, for example, when I say I'm humorous, if I ask my husband, he would say, "Oh no, she's not funny at all," right? So some of the early theories of personality attempted to describe people in a variety of ways. One of them was based on body shapes, for example. Yeah. Other theories have looked at a collection of dimensions or categories to try to describe personality. Some of our current personality traits are based on personality tests are actually based on the trait theory of personality, and so you'll see a little bit of that in the chapter. Um, Before you even got into this class, many of you have probably heard about Sigmund Freud before. Sigmund Freud is one of the most well-known psychologists, and he posited one of the most well-known theories of personality. It's so interesting to people. His theory is called the psychosexual theory of personality development, and it typically causes, extreme reactions from people based on whether they agree or disagree. His theory, in my opinion, is quite unique, just in the perspective that it came from. Keep in mind that his theory was based on interactions with people that he treated in his practice, and it was a limited group culturally. It wasn't very culturally diverse, and so that's probably why a lot of people think some of the things in there are odd. But no matter what you think of Freud, it's impossible to ignore the fact that there are a lot of aspects of the theory that appear to be at least somewhat accurate. So, for example, he talked about defense mechanisms as a part of his personality theories, and those things are fairly widely accepted as being still accurate parts of personality. Words like denial, repression, that have become kind of commonplace and part of some people's everyday language were part of Freud's theory, right? So, for those of you who have heard about Sigmund Freud, what have you heard? And do you agree or disagree with the parts of his theory that you have heard about? Uh huh. Okay. Just a question. Now, there are other theories out there that focus on people's cognitive processes, their subjective experience of the world, and views of themselves. Carl Rogers, for one, believed that the goal for personality is to have congruence in how you see yourself, how other people see you, and then how you want to be seen as the third piece there, that all should align very effectively. So it's not hard to understand and accept that personality really is pretty complex. Researchers are continually conducting studies to examine and determine how personality is formed. Do you inherit it? Do you develop it based on interactions within your environment? In a lot of ways, it does seem like personality is somewhat permanent. And so the question then is, well, what factors can adapt or help you change personality in some way? And under what circumstances does that really happen? For example, I'm a pretty proud introvert, but I have worked very hard to act extroverted in certain situations. So professionally, when I'm in professional settings, I realize that I have to be more outgoing. So I essentially force myself to do that, even though it doesn't really come naturally. And so the question is, how much of that can you change over time, right? Also, does everyone have that ability to change personality in the same way? I don't know. What differentiates an enduring personality characteristic from one that could possibly change? And what differentiates characteristics that someone might like about you compared to those that might be a little bit more obnoxious, right? Or annoying for people. And so, are there any personality characteristics that you feel like you have that you would like to change if you found out or thought that you could change it? And what would those be? Now, figuring out or assessing or putting a label on personality has been an ongoing feat, I would say, in the world of psychology. Psychologists have attempted to do that for decades as well. And I guess the question is, well, why have they, fought so hard to try to figure this out? Mainly to try to separate those sought after qualities from the offending or offensive qualities, right? If we can figure out how to give everyone positive, endearing qualities, wouldn't we want to do that? Like make people less obnoxious? I don't know. But the question is, according to who, right? So the complexity of personality has, I've already kind of mentioned that, but if personality is so complex, and the question is, how can we measure it? Or can we even, and if we did, how would we, right? If it's so complicated, what would that even look like? And the answer to that is, well, of course, very carefully is how you measure personality if you believe that you can actually measure it. So, assessing and evaluating personality really can be somewhat difficult. For example, have any of you ever taken a personality assessment, a personality test? Many of you probably have, and possibly you took one, didn't know that's what it was, right? So more and more employers, for example, are requiring people to take personality assessments and using that as a screening technique to find employees that have the skills and personality even that they want for the job. Some matchmaking websites use personality assessments to try to put people together, right, and figure out who's the best fit. So places like Match.com will use adapted personality assessments for that purpose to see who's compatible and who's not. Now, an underlying assumption in all of these assessments is that they're accurate, right? That the information that they pull, identify about a person is actually true or real, and that they can actually predict your behavior based on the things that you say about yourself, right? And that you'll match up with this person that they've tried to match you with. And so, that's been an ongoing question. Do these personality assessments really help to accurately describe people and their behaviors, not just past, but future behaviors as well? We think so, but do we really know? Definitively. Now, there are typically two broad types of personality assessments: objective tests and projective tests. Objective tests have answers provided for you and you choose from whatever that list of answers is. The answer you choose is then linked to some sort of conscious or unconscious process. Projective tests are different in that they provide no answers. So it's the responsibility of the person taking the test to provide their own answers. And it's believed that a person's answers give some sort of insight into their conscious and unconscious processes. Kind of cool, right? Yeah. So in this chapter, you'll see some common objective and projective personality assessments mentioned. Assessments like the MMPI and the Rorschach are used to identify particular personality features in people of all backgrounds. And the Rorschach is often referred to as the ink blot test. So you've probably seen it referred to in movies or online before. And there should be some examples for you within the lesson folder if you want to see some sample, not real, but sample ink blot pictures. You can also refer to I think I put a few web links in the lesson for additional information on things like the MMPI, the TAT. I don't think I included anything about house tree person in there, but that's another projective assessment that's possible. So yeah, if you want additional information about any other assessments or personality theories, let me know. Send me an email or post a message to the discussion board, and I'll try to answer whatever questions you may have. If there are other things you want to know about personality overall, hopefully this chapter will help you learn a little bit more about yourself and try not to diagnose your family members based on the personality assessment information that you learn in this chapter. All right, so I'll see you soon in the next chapter.